So the Turks are moving into Libya now. The Libya war has been going on since, well, when did Obama start that? Was it like 2014? Yeah, that was it. And since then, things were pretty bad for a lot of years. The war's been going on for a long time. Of course, I'm sure everyone remembers the open-air slave trades that came back into existence. For the first time in quite some time in Africa, we had open-air slave trades. I think you could purchase a person in some of the auctions for as little as $80. But from what I understand, most of that's gone now. The country's been mostly consolidated under the authority of General Khalifa Haftar, who is pushing himself as the new strongman, the new Gaddafi. Of course, he's not a colonel like Gaddafi, as I said. He is a general, so he's higher up in the ranks. But he is not the one that's internationally recognized in Libya. In Libya, the internationally recognized government is called the Government of National Accord. It's supposed to be some big unity government that unites all the factions of the country, but in reality they are themselves, one of the factions. And the GNA has, while it has UN recognition and sort of tenuous American recognition, they don't get along that well with the Gulf Arab states, which kind of is a negative if you're trying to establish a government in an Arab country and you don't have the support of the other Arab states. So now Turkey seems to be their big friend. Turkey, of course, is they're Turks, they're not Arabs, and they tend to politically not agree so much with the Arab states. Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Jordan often are on different sides when it comes to regional politics with Turkey. And a lot of that has to do with a group called the Muslim Brotherhood, which is pretty closely aligned ideologically with Erdogan. They're sort of, they're those guys that they're conservative Muslims, but they wear Western business suits. That's kind of their whole shtick. That, hey, we look presentable, and we're good, and we can talk to the guys in the West, and we look like normal people. We shave our beards, but we still have, pretty conservative religious beliefs. They generally believe in, having relatively free elections and a normal, Western democratic state, even if they are themselves don't believe in liberalism. They're again, by Middle East standards, considered pretty moderate. And I think Erdogan is a good embodiment of that himself. Erdogan is not exactly a nice guy. He's not somebody whose rule I would want to live under. But the sort of government that you have under Erdogan is very different from, say, Saudi Arabia. And generally speaking, I think that most Westerners would find Turkey to be a much more normal country, a much more livable country than a place like Saudi Arabia or Egypt. And Egypt is different because Egypt doesn't really have any of the religious conservatism, but they do have the very authoritarian and police state sort of thing going on, which, again, Erdogan certainly has going on. And so it's important to put all these different players in perspective when you're talking about them in civil wars like this. So the Government of National Accord, while I don't really care for them, I don't have a big problem with them either. They're not that bad. If somehow they were able to reconquer the entire country and establish their rule over Libya, things wouldn't be that bad. They certainly would be a hell of a lot better than they've been since 2014. So I think that Libya is in a pretty good trajectory right now, in that you see the dynamic now is between either the GNA or Haftar. Either way, if Haftar comes in, he's going to be Gaddafi 2.0. He's going to be basically, al-Sisi from Egypt, very similar to that. He is the top-down military authoritarian. He's not a super religious guy by any means. He just wants to be, run his little dictatorship fiefdom. Now, back to the geopolitical motivations behind this. The reason why I say the Turks and the Saudi monarch, well, not just the Saudis, but all of the Gulf Arab states, plus Egypt, I believe, are sort of at odds with this, is that the Muslim Brotherhood tends to be in opposition to most of these governments in their countries. They have branches. You might remember that al-Sisi in Egypt came to power when he led a coup to overthrow a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt. And now he's, an autocrat that doesn't really have, free elections. So the reason why you tend to see conflict between the Muslim Brotherhood and a lot of these more, I guess, entrenched Arab interests is because they tend to, because their strategy is electoral, they want to win through the ballot box to come to power. They tend to support trying to expand the franchise and expand the openness of elections in all these countries, which directly threatens something like the power of the Saudi royal family. And so all of these states kind of have an unspoken alliance. It's kind of like the Holy Alliance after the end of the Napoleonic Wars, in which the monarchies of Europe agreed to sort of intervene in each other's countries to defend the principle of divine right monarchy. It's sort of, even though not all of the anti-Muslim Brotherhood states in the Middle East are hereditary monarchies, they still have an understanding between each other that they're all going to work together to try and make sure that the Muslim Brotherhood doesn't come to power anywhere, because they're afraid that if that happens, that they'll be able to start fomenting resentment within their own country, and that the Brotherhood's power will start to spread. And again, like I said, that runs counter to the interests of all these states. And so that's why you see all of these other Middle East states interested now in waging a proxy war in Libya, because they each have something to gain and something to lose. If the Brotherhood, which largely controls the Government of National Accord, were to take over most of Libya and stabilize Libya, and then begin to prosper, well, they could start exporting their beliefs and their politics and start supporting Muslim Brotherhood groups in other countries, like, say, Egypt again, or Saudi Arabia, or, Syria is not really, that's kind of a special situation. I'll leave Syria out. And, of course, Erdogan wants other allies. Erdogan doesn't really have many allies outside of Turkey. The Brotherhood government in Egypt, like I said, was crushed. Erdogan tried to back the Brotherhood taking over Syria by funding al-Qaeda, and then hoping that the Brotherhood could then come and sweep in and take over the reins from Assad. That didn't happen. So Erdogan wants a friend. He wants a client state. He wants to expand the Ottoman Empire back to its former glory. And I think he sees that he could do this through the Brotherhood. And that's why, actually, I don't even think I even mentioned this. I've been talking about it for almost 10 minutes now. But the Turks are going to be building a base in Tripoli to help the Government of National Accord defend themselves and defend Tripoli, essentially, from Khalifa Haftar, to make sure that he never actually takes back the capital. And, of course, we know how international politics works. If you don't control the capital, well, then you're not officially the government. So you have to play this whole capture the flag game where whoever controls the capital is the real government, just like in Afghanistan. You have that government in Kabul. Sure, they don't control a whole lot of territory of Afghanistan, but they have the capital, so that means they're the real government, right? But anyway, back to Libya. The U.S., while all this has been going on, has mostly stayed quiet. They've been even though they officially backed the Government of National Accord, they have been flirting with Khalifa Haftar because, of course, it's pretty clear that Khalifa Haftar controls most of Libya, and that the Government of National Accord is not going to exactly take that back. They can barely hold on to Tripoli. There's just been a stalemate now for many months, most of this year, in fact. And so it doesn't make much sense to keep backing the GNA, but at the same time, you don't want to be coming out and saying, "Oh, I'm supporting this dictator trying to stage a coup against the nominally democratic and official government." So I think that the U.S. has been playing wait and see, and essentially has given Haftar assurances that, hey, if you take back Tripoli, sure, we're not going to have a problem with you. just play ball, and we're not going to send in the CIA or anything to overthrow you. Libya's caused enough trouble. We don't want to see things continue to get bad there. We'd be happy to have you as a puppet. And so, with the addition of the Turks here, I don't think that they are even talking about trying to break the stalemate. I think that it's pretty clear that they're just going to hold out in Tripoli, and that the stalemate will continue indefinitely, because the Turks are not exactly sending an expeditionary force to Libya to try and help liberate the country, so to speak, from Haftar. I think the Turks are already too bogged down in these other conflicts, like in northern Syria. In fact, I think what would have been smarter for the Turks, rather than invading northern Syria, was actually going to war against Haftar on behalf of this GNA government, because Libya is so sparsely populated, except around the coasts. The Turks could have just besieged the major coastal cities like Benghazi, which I believe is where Haftar is based, and could have just pushed him inland into the desert and taken all the population centers and declared victory. I think that would have been a pretty good foreign policy win for Erdogan. He would have been able to establish a Muslim Brotherhood state on the Mediterranean. He would have been able to, of course, get this base that he's building now in Tripoli, and would have been able to expand his empire some. Whereas in northern Syria, really, he has nothing to gain. I mean, sure, he's going to try and resettle all these Arabs, but frankly, I would have taken these Arabs and dumped them in Libya. I think that Erdogan's going to have a lot more trouble trying to resettle all these Arabs in the Kurdish parts of Syria, but that's not really the topic for today. So with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.